Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Walt Jerningen, your professor of Introduction to Psychology, and welcome to Chapter 10 titled Health and Stress. Now there's several main ideas in this chapter I want to go over with you on the video lecture, and these include stressors and stress, the Social Readjustment and Rating Scale, really abbreviated as the SRRS, sources of stress, medical models, including the traditional biomedical view and the newer biopsychosocial model, health psychology, the general adaptation syndrome, and coronary heart disease. Let's get started. For openers, do you think that the mind and the body are connected? Do you believe that your attitude can help or hinder your stress level and coping with actual disease? Well, for many of you, the answer is obvious. But it was not that long ago that many people, including healthcare professionals, were not so sure about this. The relationship was not clear to them. So, let's define a stressor. A stressor is a stimulus or an event that's capable of producing a physical or emotional stress. There are several varieties of stressors out there that we're going to review shortly. But now let's define stress. Stress is the physiological and or psychological response that comes afterwards. It challenges us, and you have to adapt or adjust to it somehow. Think back to Chapter 5 on classical conditioning. The stressor is the stimulus, while the stress is the response, SR. As I mentioned earlier, there are several categories of stressors. Let's look at these. And they include daily hassles. Some of the most common daily hassles that we as college students have to put up with are worrying over the future, not getting enough sleep, wasting time, and dealing with professors. Now, we don't experience this so much here at New Mexico Junior College, but I can tell you at some major universities, just finding a parking spot is a hassle. Trying to register for classes and make these fit into your work schedule is another one. Another type of class of stressor is making choices. For example, should I go out with my friends on a school night, or should I stay home and study for my psychology exam that'll be next morning? Now, in every type of conflict and choice, there's always pluses and minuses that you have to weigh. Still, another source of stressors include catastrophic events like that on September 11th, 2001. New Yorkers who were close to ground zero that day still have a higher incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, than those who are miles away. And finally, the class of stressors that we know more about than any other and have done the most research on is called life events. Turn now to page 330 in your book to the section titled Finding a Life Stress Score. Holmes and Ray are famous researchers who developed this scale in which you rate if you've experienced any of these life events over the previous 6 months. We can also do it up to the previous 12 months. Notice that these life changes are ranked from highly stressful, including death of a spouse. There's probably nothing more stressful for most of us than this. Divorce or separation, jail or prison, personal injury or illness, marriage. Marriage has a lot of benefits, but there are stressors. How about losing your job or retirement? And these life events range all the way down to relatively minor including a vacation and even Christmas. Holmes and Ray discovered that people who scored 300 points or more on the SRRS had an 80% risk of suffering a major health problem within the next 2 years, within the next 24 months. Now, we're not talking about a cold or a headache here, folks. We're talking cancer, heart disease, for athletes suffering a season-ending major injury. The SRRS is still studied and researched today. It's a very useful tool. However, remember that a major shortcoming is that it does not take into consideration how an individual copes with stressors. I am never surprised when a college student tells me they scored very highly on the SRRS. People get worried. People start to panic. You have to remember, if you're coping well and you have supports in place, this is a protective factor. This is a good coping strategy. This is a really good coping strategy. I would say exercise is right near the top as far as coping strategies for stress. How about this one? This is not so good, is it? The SRRS was the first major research to show a mind-body connection and really ushered in a new theory to understand health and wellness. The biomedical model is old school, and this is the view that disease is almost totally explained by biological factors, and the mind and body are separate and distinct. They're not related. They're not intertwined. Your grandparents, and definitely your great-grandparents, are very familiar with this view. Now, in contrast, the biopsychosocial model rules today, and in this view, biological factors are still important, but psychological and social factors play a moderating effect on disease and stress, for better or worse. The mind and body are viewed as highly interactive. Your parents are familiar with this perspective, and you definitely, as a college student, really don't know any other view. The biopsychosocial model has given rise to a specialty in my field called health psychology, which we will define as the branch of psychology that deals with psychological factors that contribute to health, illness, and recovery. As health psychologists, we study how people get sick, how they get better, and how they stay healthy. For example, we help patients to commit to exercise, to improve their nutrition, as well as gain better sleep. All of which are linked to better stress and health outcomes. So this ends part 1. Please pick up on part 2, chapter 10, Health and Stress.